I think everything he's doing as Prince of Wales is actually an indication of what he will be like as monarch. And it's sort of family first. It's protecting the interests of his 3 young children and his wife, who's been very, very unwell over the last 2 years. And currently, is it duty second? I don't know. But I think you're right. He's putting a line in the sand at the moment about what he's going to do as monarch going forward.
But as the late Queen, you say, you've got to be seen to be believed. Yeah. And the fact is you've got to be out active. And there has been criticism in the papers, subsequent to your splash, about the lack of jobs that he's doing. And compared to, say, the Princess Royal and even the King. I mean, the King, is still living with cancer and is very, very active. And it must be incredibly sapping for him. And the Princess Royal, I mean, I was at a function the other day where she became president, taking over from the Duke of Edinburgh as president of the In-N-Out Club. And there she was, turning up late at night, and then having dinner with the board of directors till about 11. She'd had a full and active day. It goes to the territory. And if you remember what she said in that interview with the Canadian television, is that be careful what you wish for, because if you start downsizing too much, your influence, your stretch, it becomes less. You're less connected with the people. People do turn out when they see, particularly people like Sophie Wessex and the new Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Edward. They turn out in droves. They like that connection. And if you lose that connection, the monarchy actually loses something that it's about.
And also, it sort of feeds into the Republican ideal that why do we need a monarchy?
So I think you've got to be careful what you wish for. And I think that William has got to, whilst thinking he wants to change things the way every monarch can change things. There's nothing set in stone. But I think that when they usually get to take that role, then they're sitting in the chair or the throne, as you like, and they suddenly realise why their father or their grandmother or their great-grandfather did something, because it's a different perspective from that throne to when you're looking to see how I'm going to change it. So I think we'll wait and see.
And timing is everything, isn't it?
Yeah.
We could be, God willing, Charles could be king for another 10, 15 years. So I think, it depends on when.
Well, William's time will come, as you pointed out there. At the moment, he's very much focusing on, he's got a very young family. And remember, Charles as king doesn't have a very young family that he has to, make sure he's at home when they get back from school, or he has the opportunity. That's what William enjoys. He enjoys the school run and he wants to bring his children up in the countryside. His life is very different to what King Charles's is. I mean, I know the late Queen Elizabeth II, obviously, someone you work very closely with. She worked extremely hard when she was bringing up her children, but that's what William perhaps is choosing not to do.
But it's a different era as well.
But he will end up, when he becomes king, having to, as you pointed out...
Just look at what Queen Elizabeth was doing right up until the end.
Yeah.
This is... I think that people, it's not really a question of choice. It's a question of duty. And I think that William has got to be quite careful when I was doing this balancing act, because I hadn't been, a dad and your mum, Ailsa. When they're at a certain age, the kids, they do need you, and you've got to be around them, and you've got to, they're having their little tantrums and what have you. The reality is, it's a difficult time for Catherine and William, and they've got those 3 children, all at different ages coming through, and that is something you've got to consider. But at the same time, the role of monarch, as we've seen, is one where duty has to come first. And I don't think there's any way around that unless you want to have a part-time monarch or a president. The reality is that is the job. And it's a job for life, and it's a job that's pretty relentless.
And it's not just a job for this country, of course. You've got the realms, you've got the Commonwealth, and it doesn't shut down at all.
But they all, over time, might begin to change. I mean, there's not an hereditary role, the head of the Commonwealth. No. Where currently it is, and we don't know what's going to happen with those other realms in the future. But I think that William is looking at the immediate future. He's just gone through a terrible crisis with not only his father still living with cancer, but his wife having to battle through. And I think that must have focused his mind. Yeah. And also, I think that what you're saying in your piece about the privacy, look, that's going to be something that's always going to live with him after what happened with his mother. Yeah. So I think you can understand the way he's thinking.
Different kings, different princes of Wales for different times, I feel. But we talk about the children and family, very important. As we very stress. We keep being told how the children are very important and the upbringing. Yeah. Ailsa, you were there when George, not when literally when George was born, but you were working for the Queen when Prince George was born. What's the dynamic there with William and his children? Because am I right in recalling, it's before my time, that if we had the footage, we would see you laying out the easel announcing Prince George's...
I did. So there was a letter signed by all the medical team who were present for George's birth, and it was the official announcement, just saying, you know, the weight, baby born, healthy baby, healthy mother. And I walked across that very famous gravel forecourt and I put the easel up.
What's that like doing? It's a silly question, but...
Well, it's of course, you know, press secretaries are always behind the cameras. We're never sort of the story. And suddenly when you become the story, it's almost overwhelming. And I remember coming home and my son was only 5 or 6 at the time. And he said, "Hi, Mum, saw you on telly. What's for supper?" And that's very grounding, actually.
They did also put it out on a tweet and all these other things as well. So it wasn't that 1,000 years ago.
No, it's modernity and tradition. It does make you sound
like you were doing it a long, long time ago, but it's like they were putting the easel out and everything. They did have modernity as
modernity and tradition.
Did you ever get any sense, I mean, it's very early days then, George had only just been born, but did you ever get any sense about William's, fatherhood, the way that he dotes on his children, and he would maybe want them to be brought up in the countryside rather than a big palace?
I think, he might be a prince, but he was also a new father, and like any new father, you have that overwhelming sense of pride, but also, it's terrifying. And he's spoken about, having to practice putting the car seat in when the baby came out of hospital. So, I think he was like any new father. It's that amazing sense of joy, but you're you're on display to millions of people globally when you're walking out of that hospital, which is quite terrifying.
So we expect William and Catherine and the 3 children to be in Balmoral this summer. The King earlier this week, there was a lovely little ceremony. You've probably seen it. Yeah. You've probably been there with the Shetland pony, and then he was welcomed by the soldiers into Balmoral. The whole family's going to be gathering there. Prince Andrew's up there with Sarah Ferguson, by the way. He was banned from Christmas, but he's allowed there for summer. What happens at Balmoral? Is it a time? I imagine I believe it's probably a time where all the family just get to sit around, have a barbecue or have a nice meal, have a dance, whatever they do at Balmoral, sort some issues out, talk about trivial stuff, talk about important things. What happens at Balmoral, Ailsa?
Well, of course, the monarchy, the head of state, doesn't stop just because you're on summer holidays in Scotland. So the Queen still used to go through her red boxes every day. She would entertain heads of state. The Prime Minister at the time would always come up for a long weekend, sometimes with their family, sometimes without. So I suppose figuratively, she will go through those gates of Balmoral and you sort of hang your crown on the gateposts and you do feel more relaxed. And it is much more relaxed. Even dressing is much more relaxed. They've got their kilts on, chinos. It's not sort of the suits and ties, and the staff are the same as well. And it's beautiful. I remember the last time I went up there and we were driving in the estate, and Queen Camilla, she was the Duchess of Cornwall then, was just out walking on her own with her dog. And they do feel much more relaxed and at home in Balmoral.